Welcome to the Hoporenkv Native American Podcast, where we discuss focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. I am Mvskoke, the Training and Development Coordinator, and with me is Brooke Warrington, the Training and Development Specialist. Today we'll be talking about mental health first aid training with our special guest, Cortney Yarholar.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so before we get started in today's episode, we're going to go ahead and let Cortney just share a little bit about himself. Cortney, can you go ahead and tell all of us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and inviting me on to share a little bit more about mental health first aid and a little bit about what's going on around Indian country. So my name is Cortney Yarholar, and I am Sac and Fox. I'm enrolled Sac and Fox, but I'm also Mvskoke Creek, and I'm Pawnee, and I'm Otoe, and I live in Oklahoma. So I actually live in Moore, Oklahoma with my family. I have a wife and two children. So our oldest, he is 14 years old.
Oh.
Our youngest, she is 9 years old. And, they are at an amazing age and they keep us busy. We're always going to softball games or basketball games, or right now my son's also in track and he's doing really amazing, just blowing me away. And so they keep us busy. And then also we try to stay busy with other activities and events, cultural activities. We try to stay involved in the community, in the Native community here across Oklahoma, as well as other places as well across the United States. Travel, we go to different powwows and celebrations, family throughout the nation. And so we try to make our rounds throughout the year. So again, it keeps us very busy, but it's a wonderful life and it's great to, Indian country is small. And so we have a big family and a lot of relations. And so we try to keep those connections close. Plus, it's a blessing, right? And then our children get to learn and meet relatives all throughout Indian country. And so, the tradition is when they grow and they have families of themselves and they travel, they go places, they'll have relatives and they'll feel at home as well. So really happy to continue that on. That's how I was raised, traveling across Indian country, going to powwows, raised in a powwow family that dances at the celebrations. And so we try to keep that going with our children as well.
What was your most memorable moment?
Most memorable moment of when? It's all memorable.
Well, was there a moment that you're like, if I could freeze time, I would right now? Do you have one of those? Or is there just many amazing moments with your family?
Every day we start the day with gratitude. And that's something that's been taught and something that I've learned, something I've observed from mentors, from people that I look up to, and a practice that has helped me in my life. And we try to practice that on a daily, to model that for our children, is practicing gratitude. And within that, it allows, I've grown to understand that it allows me to just appreciate every moment and every day. And even the tough times, right? Even the challenging moments, just thankful that we get to be parents, and we may not always know the right things to say or the right things to do, but we're there, and we're trying our best and we're doing our best. And that's what children need. They need somebody there that's going to do their best. And so that's another thing that we say is we're going to do our best today and make it a good day at school and make it a good day at work. And we don't expect others to make it good for us. We're going to be grateful and make it a good day. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, every day.
Oh, thank you for sharing. That's so lovely. Especially, teaching kids at a young age to cultivate gratitude. That's going to go such a long way in their overall well-being in life. And then also teaching them to, maintain their familial connections, connect with their elders, all of that. That's such great practices to cultivate in your children's lives. And then just cherry on top is, we're going to do our best. That's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we found it helpful, and like many things, we're learning as we go. As parents, we're learning as we go, and it's like many. I think we've experienced the opposite as well. You know, getting in that habit of complaining, or getting in that habit of seeing what's going wrong today, or this happened, or I had a rough morning, or this didn't work, or that didn't work, and then we start letting things add up and build up, and then pretty soon we have a pretty rough day, and then we're taking things out on one another or people, and so we just trying to be real conscious in how we step into the world. And I know I don't like feeling that way, so we try to, or not we try, we do. We are grateful, and we do our best. So
I love that idea of starting the day with gratitude practice. In the past, wow, when I really started getting into that, it was always like kind of an evening, like a gratitude journaling, or like
Mhm.
more of like a daily reflection, which of course that's great too. But I really
Yeah.
love that y'all do it in the morning and kind of set the tone for your day with that.
Mhm.
I think that's really beautiful. I want to try that moving forward as well.
It's, yeah, you have to be intentional and make time, and you don't have to make a big deal out of it. So I love it when I see, like, we'll be like my son, right? He's got long hair. And so getting ready for school, I'll braid his hair, or maybe his mom will braid his hair. But I notice that's a time when him and his mom, they connect and they share some moments together. And it's just, uh, it's always a relaxing time. So again, it just kind of reinforces that understanding that we have of the strength in hair and culture and all the things that go along with that. Um, but it allows those times for that bonding and that gratitude and setting our intentions for the day. So that's any of those little moments in life, appreciate them and lean into them.
That's very sweet. I like how you tie it back to even like when, braiding your son's hair. Does that help with your personal mental health? Do you feel like by doing these little things and really enjoying those moments with your family, do you feel like that has helped your mental health and helped you keep a clear, positive mindset?
Oh, certainly. Certainly. We have to be intentional with it. And when we're talking about mental health, I understand and recognize that there's a lot of stigma around that word and around that framing of mental health. And it's understandable when we look at the history of mental health and in this country. And and there is a lot of stigma. So when we can begin to even use different terminology and start looking at it, I love it when I've heard people use the terms of mental wellness, thinking about wellness as a overall, in a holistic way, our mental or physical, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And so maintaining that balance and maintaining our wellness, reframing it in those ways, I think is very helpful. And so when we think of it like that, yeah, maintaining our mental wellness, it 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 helps us slow down. It helps us be intentional and really leaning into those natural moments throughout life that we can really gain strength from. And it helps balance us, right? It helps us find our balance and keep and maintain our balance. Because when we go back to those old understandings or those old ideas of mental health, that's something outside of us where it feels like we have to go somewhere to get. But mental wellness really centers it into something that we can do and have an active role in maintaining that balance for our overall health. And so, yeah, that's a great observation. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Of course, I personally find it hard. I'm like trying to, as you said, like reframe my brain to find like the daily task enjoyable.
Mhm.
So for me, I personally don't like putting on makeup, but I'm trying to find the beauty in it of like trying to enjoy, taking that time in the morning to get ready. So that's very interesting how you talked about reframing it and that it really can impact your day-to-day life. Is there anything that you can tell us about mental health first aid?
Yes, thank you. Mental health first aid. So mental health first aid is a program that was developed in Australia, actually. And it's a public health, community health education program to help educate and increase we call it mental health literacy of community members. And it's the idea is like first aid. So individuals in the community learn enough. They don't become the doctors, they don't become the health providers, but in first aid, you learn enough to identify when somebody needs help. We learn enough to intervene until the professional gets there. So that's the same concept that's applied to mental health first aid. And it was developed in Australia. And I'm going to say I'm not going to say any dates because I'll get them wrong. But it was developed in Australia and the reason is, like many places that we see here in the US, access to mental health care came with challenges and barriers, and a lack of mental health providers, as well as access and transportation and maybe costs and all the other things that go along with it, including stigma. So this program was developed to help empower community members with the knowledge, and then also, like I said, increase the mental health literacy so that we gain an understanding of, oh, hey, we all have mental health, and how do we maintain it? And when somebody's struggling with their mental health, how can we help? How can we intervene? Because when a person's experiencing a mental health difficulty or challenge, they may not always know how to navigate that or how to ask for help. And so this really provides an opportunity for community members, family members to build their knowledge, their awareness. And I always like to say it builds your confidence. It builds your confidence. And when it builds confidence, what that does is that decreases that stigma, right? It decreases, because what is that stigma? It's all grounded in fear. So when we have an awareness and knowledge and confidence, then it decreases the fear, and we're able to come in and we're able to be a supportive relative, a supportive neighbor with our family members and community. And so in early 2000, the program was adapted and brought into the United States and sponsored by the National Council for Mental Wellness. And they used to have another name, and it slips my mind at the moment. But now the organization is called the National Council for Mental Wellness, and they host the Mental Health First Aid program. And what it is, it's a 2-year certification program. And so we offer trainings for community members, health related fields, non-health related fields, and just the average everyday citizen. So the mental health first aid it's a skills-based training course that teaches participants about mental health and substance use issues. When the participant goes through the mental health first aid course, they learn a 5-step process that helps them intervene and help people access culturally competent and appropriate care.
I love that framing, though, of how by, imparting this knowledge to people, like you're not only providing this sense of aid and help should these situations arise, but battling that stigma by building confidence on the topic. I really like that perspective. You had mentioned that community members could be trained in it. When you say that, is this kind of like, like the typical people you hear about, like teachers, police officers? Like, is it like, do you mean that? Like, who all would you recommend get trained as a mental health first aider?
No, that's a great question. Thank you. Yes, teachers, coaches, first responders, and then anybody that's just interested in learning, right? I always say anybody that interacts with people in their daily life that's who this course is for. And you do not have to have a high knowledge of mental health issues or substance abuse issues. But it is great for those that are in recovery. It's also great for even mental health professionals. I've heard a lot of mental health professionals go through the program and say, oh, well, I learned so much, even though I've been in this field for a while, or I'm a mental health provider. I didn't think of it that way. And then another great thing about this course, when a trainer is delivering the course. It's very community based. And what we try to do in preparation, there's a lot of preparation that goes into hosting a training, because what we want to do is we want to identify all of the resources in the community in that are available to the people, the participants that are going to be going through the training. So once they go through the training, on the 5-step process, the last process is to make that referral, to make that warm handoff, to make sure and help somebody receive help. So we do a lot of prep work in the front end before the training, so that way there's a resource list and a resource sheet that's passed out and handed out, so people walk away with tools and connections and a network that they can plug into. That's part of the fear of asking somebody if they need help, because if they say yes, well, then what? Where do I help them? How do I help them get help? Who's here? Who's available? What's the help? And so what I like about the training is it really encourages the trainers to do that prep work with the community, identify those resources, and have those available for the participants. So that way, again, it helps build their confidence as they're intervening with somebody that needs help. And, so I'll just say a little bit more about the mental health first aid program. There's different modules, and there's actually several modules and community specific adapted courses that's been developed. The mental health first aid program, when a participant goes through the program and they get their certification, it's a 2-year certification. So they're identified by the National Council for Behavioral Wellness or Mental Wellness as a mental health first aider. And so they can intervene and help somebody access help. And that's good for 2 years. What that also means is in that 2 years, you have access to the mental health first aid resources, which they're always updating. They're always putting out new publications, new research. It really get plugged into a larger community that's learning more about mental wellness and how to help and how to be a supportive community member. So that's just a little bit more about that certification itself. There are various modules. There's a lot of different modules of the mental health first aid program. The original module that was brought to the United States is called the adult mental health first aid. And that's for adults learning how to intervene and help other adults experiencing a mental health or substance abuse crisis. Now they've adapted it to where it's youth mental health first aid. And youth mental health first aid is for adults that work with youth. And so if you're a teacher, a coach, a bus driver, anybody that's in the lives of young people, this is a great training for you. And the young people, they go to people that they trust, right? And that can be they open up with people they trust. Again, that could be a teacher, that could be a parent, that could be a teacher, it could be the librarian, it could be the bus driver, it could be the lunch people, right? The lunch personnel. Anybody in their school, we don't know, because everybody has different connections, and find those connections and people that they connect with in different places. And so we encourage really any adult that works with youth or that's in the lives of youth to go through the training. Let's see, other adaptations that they have a teen mental health first aid training, and that is designed for teens to help other teens, which is amazing.
That's so important to have out there. Wow.
That's really cool.
It is. Mm-hmm.
But that's usually who they're with, and that's who they trust to talk to as well. That's incredible.
No, that's why
Exactly.
it's so smart. Sorry, Courtney, keep going.
No. Yeah, I'm glad to see your excitement, because it's exciting. It's great. Let's see. The mental health first aid has also adapted the program for a community specific, they call them community specific trainings. And I know there's some for veterans. Evergreen Training and Development, which is my small company, I am certified in delivering is the adult mental health first aid, the youth mental health first aid, and then also one of the community specific, which is the youth mental health first aid for tribal and indigenous communities. And
That's
that has,
Mm.
so it's the youth mental health first aid curriculum. It's been adapted to deliver within tribal communities. And so my small business, Evergreen Training and Development, is designed to increase, it's designed for professional development, for helping professionals, and also for community members to just really empower wellness from within. And through my professional development trainings, provide training around cultural competency, for mental health providers, education, juvenile justice, vocational rehab, let's see, tribal housing. So I've reached so many different sectors in helping folks build their confidence in helping individuals that might be experiencing mental health issues. Also, with their service delivery, whatever their service is, right? Connecting in a more culturally competent, more culturally appropriate way um, through cultural competency training. And so that's just a little bit about Evergreen Training and Development. I always say training and development for helping professionals. But what I love about mental health first aid is it opens it up to more than just the helping professionals, it's community members. So Evergreen Training and Development is certified to deliver the adult mental health first aid, youth mental health first aid, and the youth mental health first aid for tribal communities.
What was it like adapting that curriculum to make it culturally competent for Native American communities?
I wasn't on the team that made the
Mm.
adaptations. However, just a little bit of background here. Um, so I'm a social worker, uh, licensed master social worker. I have been in a professional capacity for over 15 years. We'll just say that. And throughout working, I've been blessed to work with across Indian country my whole career in various capacities, mainly in training and technical assistance. So helping develop programs for children's mental health and children and families' mental health. And I've always had an emphasis on suicide prevention. That's been the driver of and motivation for my work or my professional life. And what I found in doing that work is, a lot of the mentors and a lot of the community members said we have to go upstream and intervene upstream. And so it's really, I feel like that's how my career has been reflective of that, going upstream and working with different sectors that touch the lives of Native youth.
Mm.
So it could be education, it could be health, mental health, it could be juvenile justice, all these different sectors that in the child welfare, all these different sectors that may touch the lives of youth and families in our tribal communities. So saying all of that, I'm very I'm very careful in what resources we bring to our tribal communities, our people, our families. We have an understanding. We know the history. We know the history of our tribal communities. We know the resilience. Each tribal community, each region, they all have their own stories, right? We all have our own
Mm.
stories, our own histories, our own legacies, experiences, both good and bad. We talk about this historical trauma and how it impacts and how it manifests today we might see unhealthy behaviors, unhealthy coping skills. And I love how we started out the conversation talking about how we ground ourselves in gratitude and talking about all those positive ways of moving forward throughout our day. And those are learned, right? We have to
Yeah.
learn those and we have to practice those. Uh, even like, but that's the same with like coping, like the negative coping skills, right? With
Yeah.
self-blame, self-doubt, reaching for a substance to lift our spirits, or whatever that might be, that anger, all of those are learned as well. So when we learn something, we can also unlearn it, and we can learn something different. And so that's what I really like about the work that I do, is I get to go into communities with individuals and families, systems, I'm very system oriented. So we work with the systems and try to create paths of hope and healing so that our individuals and families can unlearn some of these behaviors and embrace and learn healthier ways. And what we find is a lot of those healthier ways are always found within the cultural knowledge and that cultural wisdom and ways of knowing from our tribes. And so it's also so much fun to get to, when I'm invited into a community, to be a guest and learn, observe, and just see the amazing, the way it was shared with me, it's the innate wisdom of the human spirit. It's there to heal themselves and to move forward into this world. Uh, and our spirits are designed to love. That's what we do, right? We want to love ourselves, and we want to love one another, but we understand that when we look at this historical trauma, the impacts, and what some of our communities are going through, you might be experiencing poverty, we might be experiencing domestic violence, we might be experiencing all these negative things. It causes us to protect our spirit. And in doing so, we might push people away, we might isolate ourselves. All of those are natural human instincts. It's survival. So what we get to do in my work, what I love, is when the systems and the communities are working together to create paths of hope and healing so that the innate wisdom of the human spirit can heal itself and love on one another. So in a good way.
That's so beautiful. And I love you use that language of pathways. And it's so interesting because when you think about how tending to your mental health, tending to your mental wellness,
Mhm.
it's like happening outside of you within your community, opening those paths to love. But then also when you think about the way that that healing like affects the way that your brain works and your brain chemistry, you're
Mhm.
also creating like, corrected pathways in your brain. And like, I don't
Yes.
know, it's just so cool how it's like happening on the outside sphere. It's happening within you. Like, I just think that's really interesting, and I love that you're bringing that healing out to the world and that you're keeping it very community focused because, at the end of the day, like, we are meant to be together, we are all part of one another, and when you do try to navigate it on your own, of course, it's doable, sure, but it's so much better and
Mhm.
easier when it's done in connection with your community and in connection with your loved ones and when it becomes, that journey that everyone can embark on together. And I think that's one
Mhm.
of the things that's particularly beautiful about the way that this program is done, that you're bringing these tools to the community and then almost kind of like setting it up and then letting it go. And then they're able to continue to foster that healing amongst themselves. I
Mhm.
think that's really special.
Yeah, certainly. And it's again, I'm just a, I view myself as a I've been very blessed in my life. I have I'm in my 40s, and I'm married. I have a wonderful wife. She's amazing. She's Kiowa. So I always have to say that, make sure that I say that. She's Kiowa. So our children, we have two children. They're learning as much as they can. We're trying to teach them languages, songs, and just ways of being in this world, and trying to be helpful and those kinds of things, those values. I'm also blessed that I still have my parents. So I have a mother, I have a father, and I have a grandmother. She's 90, I believe she's 94 years old, and she's very healthy, and she's been there in my life since day one. So, very special to me. And, we, like many families and a lot of families, we've had our ups and downs, and experience loss and those kinds of things, but also very strong in faith and in prayer and in the spirituality of living. And I think that that's been very helpful as a foundation for me and for my life. And then when I was blessed to go out and do this work, I think for me, it helped me listen. It helped me observe, and it's helped me learn. And so with that, when I'm invited into a community or an organization, I'm a guest. And, I'm not the one making things better. I'm a servant. And I was very blessed that I was able to go and get a degree to learn a few skills to try to help here and there. And so that's what I do. And I always say, my definition is I always say I want to put it on my business card. I'm a table mover. I say I'm a table mover because I remember growing up and we'd go to a celebration or we'd go to, a family gathering. You get there and you sit, and then they'll tell you, aunties will tell you, or mom will tell you, grab that table and move it over there, or grab that table and move it over there, those kinds of things. So I feel like that's what I do today with my work, my professional career. Is I'm a table mover when I'm invited into communities, but the tables have transformed. And sometimes they are tables. Sometimes we are setting up physical tables, but sometimes we're working on policy development. We're working on designing programs. Maybe we're helping evaluate a program. Maybe we're helping a program learn how to engage the voice of lived experience of a young person that has survived, a suicide attempt or whatever it might be, to really help design the messaging and to strengthen that program. So again, those tables take many forms these days.
No, you're perfectly fine. I personally like how you find a way to tie everything back to a certain chapter in your life, like the table mover, a certain chapter in your, like, I think everyone has been in that situation just growing up. Like, I know personally for us, it was like, go grab the chairs, move the chairs, like bring
Mhm.
everything. So I love how now as an adult, you're like, oh, I still move tables. Like that's still who I am at the end of the day. Like I'm still gonna come here and I'm still gonna help you.
And I'm gonna get a little spiritual here. No, on a spiritual sense, it's the way I'm beginning to and this is this is Cortney Yarholar talking. This is not mental health first aid. This is not any curriculum. This is total experience, my journey that I'm sharing. What I've learned about emotions is energy in motion. So emotion, it's got to go somewhere. It's got to do something. It's moving. But I've also learned through my own journey and spiritual journey is that it's a language of a higher power that's speaking through us. And what the opportunity is, we have an opportunity to slow down and to really lean into those emotions and listen. What are these emotions telling me right now? Right? If I'm upset, if I'm angry, if I can't focus, if I'm whatever it's going on, right? It's an opportunity to slow down, listen, lean in. And for me, how I deal with that is I've been taught to pray. And it helps again maintain that balance or get to a place where we can start trying to find that balance. Um, you know, and when we think about that prayer, it's even evolved, I think, cultural ways of knowing and what the dominant society has taught a lot of our Native people. And, I'm not talking religion, right? Because religion is very structured in a way of those prayers. In the spiritual sense, we're also learning, or I'm learning, that those prayers can take place in a lot of different forms. So it could be like a traditional, what you think of a prayer, yes. But also maybe it's working out for somebody, right? Maybe it's running for someone, right? Maybe it's writing, it's journaling, maybe it's whatever that intention is. One of the prayers that I love is dancing. I shared that I grew up dancing, going to powwows. it took me a long time to realize that for me, that's a prayer. I remember the first time I remember I have a memory. You asked about a memory earlier. So a memory that I have, I always like to say, this is when I learned about dancing. So I was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old, right? And out there dancing. And my grandpa, he was my great grandpa. And he danced in his time, and he taught all his children and grandchildren. But I remember being in a powwow. I was in the arena, and I was dancing, and he was watching me, and he was sitting there, and he was old. He was older at that time, and he had his cane, but he was always smiling, right? At least for the grandkids. I mean, we never saw him any other way. He was always smiling and laughing. But I was dancing, and he was watching me, and the more he would smile, the harder I would dance. And the harder I would dance, I'd look at him, and he'd smile, and he'd be, he was like jamming with his cane, and like bouncing with me. And so that exchange back and forth, it showed me that when you just release yourself and allow the spirit to move you, I mean, that's a prayer. You're expressing these blessings. You're blessed that you're able to dance, able to move. And for me, it's a way to praise the creator and show my thanks and gratitude. And I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I was learning. That's what my grandpa was teaching me. And with dancing, what I found is when you do that, when you release and you just let yourself go and enjoy it, somebody that's watching, they feel it, they have good medicine, and they give that back. And it's just an exchange of good medicine back and forth. So that's when I say, that's my memory that I have of, I was like 4 or 5. That's when I learned about dancing, like what it truly meant. So for me, when I dance, that's a prayer. Yeah.
That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that moment with us. I personally can relate to the dancing aspect. I love dancing in my traditional clothes, especially like when my grandma's there. Even though she's also older, she'll like look at us and she'll like signal over like, can I come dance? And we're like, of course you can come dance. Like, of course. And I think for me, it's like spirit reminding me, you do have the answers. You just need to have a little fun. So thank you for like reminding us that prayer doesn't have to be the atypical way that everyone thinks of prayer. Prayer is unique in your own way. And I greatly appreciate you sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. And I know we came here to talk about mental health, but you know what? We talk about it and we know about it and we experience it in a whole, the word is holistic, right? That a lot of people are familiar with, but I think it's deeper than that, right? We experience mental health as a part of an overall being. And I think that that's how we should talk about it. And so when we talk about it through spirituality and prayer, we talk about it through spirituality and being in relationship and being in right relationship with one another. Yeah, that's all a part of mental wellness, and as well as physical, right? The physical wellness, because when we're healthy and we're active and we're moving and we feel good, our bodies feel good, our minds feel good, emotions and spirits, we feel balanced, but we're also can show up and be helpful to ourselves and to one another. And when we think about those traditional values and ways of being that our ancestors, you could say, lived, they helped one another out, right? They were helpful. They were a helpful people. And that was a part of the strength and the resilience that we know, that we talk about, is they did it together. Yeah. They experienced a lot of hardship, but you know what? They did it together. They made it through together, and they passed on some very important values and lessons. And so we try to continue those and find those and learn those and practice those so that they can continue on as well. And so it's very, very unique, I think, for a lot of our tribal folks. And again, tying it back to what I said, the work earlier, when I get to go and experience and observe and witness some of the great things that our tribal programs are doing, is in the communities and families, they are they're creating those pathways of hope. They're creating those, trying to maintain culture, and they're finding that healing within those cultural ways of knowing. So, mental health first aid, it's a great program. It's about 7 hours worth of content. And but again, what I love about delivering mental health first aid, and the newer module that I spoke about, mental health first aid in tribal communities, I love that it is very, I guess you can say, it follows a curriculum. So it follows a path, an adult learning path. Um, so that, we stick to the fidelity, and we move people from their learning from one point to another. And so in one way it is rigid, as that it sticks to this curriculum, but in another way there's a lot of room and space for us to really connect with the community that we're training in. And so it's adaptive to that community. And that's one thing that I really took away from this newer module, the youth mental health first aid in tribal communities, is that it's very adaptable for the community that we're working within. Again, doing that pre-work, understanding those resources. And again, one of the amazing things with this curriculum, what I love about it, is the last 2 steps are in the 5-step process, is learning how to make those referrals or trying to get somebody to help. Now, what I love about the last 2 steps, one is getting them to professional help, but another step is getting them to other help in the community that may be not considered the professional mental health provider. It can be what the community defines as a helping resource. It could be a program, it could be a person, it could be a traditional healer, it could be whatever it might be, right, for that community. And what I always say when we're talking about healing, we're seeking healing, I use a lot of analogies, right? So healing is like shopping for shoes, right? Healing is like shopping for shoes. They all might do the same thing, but they're not all going to be the right fit. So we got to shop around. We got to find out what's out there in the community that works for me. Again, we talked about it already. It could be running, it could be dancing, it could be writing, it could be whatever it is. So healing looks different for everyone. And that's what I like about this curriculum. It really allows that creativity and that new framing, or a different framing, that really connects with our tribal communities. I had the privilege and honor to support a tribal program, one of our Alaska villages. This was years ago. They were doing it was actually a suicide prevention program that they had. And they had a 12-month prevention program that was designed around their cultural ways of knowing and subsistence living, and it was about connections and creating right relationship. And I keep saying that term, right relationship. That comes from Dr. Ulrich, Dr. Jessica Ulrich. She does amazing work with around research around connections, and she says being in right relationship. And I love that, because it's not only with individuals, but it's with your relatives. When we look around, when we think about this Indigenous idea of relatives, we're connected with all living things. That means our surrounding and everything. So being in right relationship and understanding where things are. So again, that's a kind of a spiritual existence as well. But anyway, back to this program. So they were doing some amazing things. But when you look at it on the surface, and they would tell their story, they said, we have a berry picking program. They said, we have a berry picking program. And for what I was honored to do was to help them tell that story of the berry picking program, and how that truly was an amazing prevention program, a 12-month prevention program for young people. It brought them in. There was a starting point. They worked with an elder. They worked with community members. cultural knowledge keepers. They learned subsistence living. They picked berries. They made the baskets that they used. They harvested the baskets. They harvested the everything like that went along with it. But when they would do all of these activities, they were hearing stories. They were hearing stories from the cultural leaders, from the elders. They were making those strong connections and relatives. Then they learned how to be a relative. They learned how to be helpful in the community. Then they became those mentors. So it was a 12-month mentoring program that was a prevention program for prevention of suicide prevention, but also the other related risk factors, right?
But that's such a great analogy about this idea of like healing being different, comparing it to going shoe shopping. And I especially love how you spoke of the berry picking program, that it's not just like a temporary thing. And I imagine most communities, whatever their personal sacred practices that they want to utilize, it's this idea of like you go through it yourself and then you stay on to help to, function as a steward for others,
Mm-hmm.
creating something that's sustainable so that it can continue on and
Oh,
help others moving forward in that community. And that's so, so, so important that when people do trainings of this nature, that it's not, like a kind of a one stop, okay, we taught you, bye. Like it's,
right,
set up in a way where it can continue to flourish on, it can be carried on, that knowledge can be handed down moving forward.
right.
And that way the healing that happens, that can be sustainable as well and just continue to, work its magic. So I think that's
Definitely.
so important.
Yes, yes, it is. It's certainly, it really is important. And I love that you mentioned sustainability, because a lot of the programs and a lot of the efforts that we're seeing throughout Indian country, when we think about sustainability, yeah, we think about sustainability in terms of the finances and how we're going to continue a program, right? But I love it when communities are really thinking about sustainability in a way of investing in the people and sustaining the behavior change, right? Because we can sustain that in many different ways. And you talked about you mentioned the, if not the most important asset in any kind of programming is the people, all right? You, you mentioned them coming back and contributing. That's reciprocity. That's community. That's being helpful. That's grounded in those traditional values. And it also aligns with what we know and we see our tribal leadership. Our tribal leadership, they go into these positions to help. They want to make good choices and decisions. We're, we're right now we're witnessing some amazing things. We're witnessing tribal nation building, tribes really creating a place within their tribe, their lands, their space where their people can thrive. And that's an amazing thing. And so when our programs can invest in the individuals, in that reciprocity, in that behavior change,
Mhm.
and tell that story to those decision makers and those leaders, that's where we get sustainability from. And it's wonderful when we see all that connect. And what I like about the mental health first aid, kind of how that fits into this whole picture,
Mhm.
because it is an outside program that comes in, and it'll take place for one day. We'll train a few people. We would love to train everybody in the community, but what I love about the mental health first aid program is it starts the conversation. It starts healthy dialogue around mental wellness, and it helps the community members that go through this really take ownership and say, well, this is what it looks like for our community. Here's the resources that we have. Here's what we're currently doing. And it's that's what I like about the program is it opens that door. It creates an opportunity for that healthy dialogue. Because a lot of times there's some great programs and the community members don't even know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Uh, we may not know about some of the great things some of the things that are happening in our community. And that's just kind of how it goes. I know everybody has busy schedules, all of these things. but I also find when I do these kind of trainings and we have community members in there, I also open it up to the community members, like, what resources are you aware of that we could add to our list?
Yeah.
That creates amazing conversation.
Was there any point in your life that led you to your passion about this work? Is this something where you kind of just saw the need and wanted to help, or were you always passionate about mental health and mental wellness?
Like I said, I always like to say that I've started this work when I was very young, traveling with my family across the country, going to powwows and celebrations
Yeah.
and making those relationships. And because at that time I grew up in a way of experiencing our tribal communities of of seeing all the love, of seeing all the amazing just strength of who our Indian people are, the diversity, yet the camaraderie, the connections, the relations, the connection. I mean, it's just amazing, right? That's what I know about our Indian people.
Mm.
And you know, growing up in a way when you're traveling across the country, you never go hungry, right? When you have relatives out there and you got friends and family, it's just, just those simple things, but it's good. And then you get to help and contribute. And so that's what I know of Indian country. That's what I know of all of our relatives. It wasn't until I went to college that I learned that there's all of these statistics across Indian country that are they're not they're very negative, right? We have high rates of suicide, we have high rates of substance use, we have high rates of domestic violence. We look at just so many issues that we struggle with in our communities. I didn't even learn about that, like look at it in that deficit way until I got to college. And it was, I'll admit, I was probably protected, right, by my family. But again, with that, the way that I was raised, is it helped me see the strengths and understand those natural strengths within our communities. And so I take that along with me within this work. It's like, hey, the answer's already there in the
Yeah.
communities, right? Uh, so that's the understanding that I have when I carry through this work. And as far as the personal experience, so when I first graduated with my bachelor's degree, I went to work for my tribe at the in the education department. I was the education coordinator, and at that time we had a couple of small grants. We had a K through 12 program, and then we had a program for tribal members that were going to college, and it was a scholarship program. But it was at the time it was a small program, and primarily, we did some tutoring for the K through 12, but primarily we handed out school supplies, you know, and some school clothes and school vouchers and things like that, which was great and always helpful. So I was doing, we were giving out the school supplies and the vouchers, and we were being helpful in that way. And it was, we know the families, it was appreciated. I'm never going to say that I'm an expert in anything. I'm just a helper, and I'm a relative and a community member, and I'm going to try to be helpful wherever I can. And thankfully, my toolbox continues to grow, and because there's some amazing people that are experts that do amazing things, and anything I can do to help get their work out there that's going to help be a resource for our individuals and families, that's what I'm going to do. So that's kind of how my story has evolved.
I love that. So you mentioned like when you were growing up, you were going to different powwows with your family, that, what you saw was just the love, the community, the sharing, the healing. And while every kid is sheltered to some degree, of course, but now the work that you're doing is going to enable other Native youth growing up to also, have that same experience where it's just the love, the healing, the community, the
Hmm.
sharing. And that's really incredible how that all, comes full circle with your work. So I
Yeah.
it's a very big, beautiful table that you're helping to move right now. And we really, really appreciate you taking the time to share about this program, about your story, about your history, what it means to you. So much of what you said is going to resonate with people. And when it does, where should they go to learn more about your program? Because we can put links in with the episode, and we'll have them down below. So where
Okay.
would you like them to go to find out more about your program?
You can go to my website. It's evergreen.training. So www.evergreen.training. It's not a .com, a .org, or anything like that. It's evergreen.training. Very simple. I tried to be descriptive in what we do. We offer training. So I wanted to say a little bit about the Evergreen, the name Evergreen. There's a couple of meanings here. So Evergreen, it refers to cedar, right? Cedar is one of the traditional medicines that many of our Native people, and I know the tribes that I grew up with, uh, that's what we use for healing. That's been used for healing throughout generations. I've been told that it's green all year long, and that's why they call it evergreen, right? But it also means that it's sustainable through every season. So similarly, culture and sustainability is at the core of the capacity that we build together with your organization, your community-based initiative, and your community members. So the mission of Evergreen Training and Development is to provide training, coaching, facilitation with Indigenous communities, helping professionals and organizations so that we foster those strength-based practices and build organizational capacity. I want to help create culturally relevant, meaningful, and healthy narratives. So that's that's our mission statement. But again, going back to the Evergreen, it's sustainable all season. So I feel like we go into the work with the spirit that we want to make sure that it is sustainable, right? We don't want to come in and just, we think about our communities and a lot of the principles that we have. There's a term called being trauma informed. And so for a long time, I've helped communities as well. I've been blessed with the opportunity to learn how to help organizations and communities become trauma informed. We're evolving that's evolving now into becoming healing informed. But I share that because when we look at community initiatives and community programs, helping programs, the consistent thing about trauma is inconsistency. And so within a lot of our tribal communities, we've seen programs come and go, and that can be hurtful and not helpful for our families and for our children. That maybe there's a great program and it's really helping, and then it's gone the next year, right? And so we want to work for consistency. We want to work for sustainability. So that's another reason why I chose the name of Evergreen, is we come in with that spirit of sustainability. We want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be sustained over time. We look at sustainability just a little bit differently. Yes, the finances is important, but when it's mission driven and focused on the individuals and investing in the individuals, and that is those stories are translated up to the leadership and the decision makers, they can help support those initiatives so that it can be sustained over the long term. So that's a little bit about that name of Evergreen. There's also another reason for Evergreen, the name Evergreen. I mentioned my grandma. She really took us all over the country, going to the powwows and celebrations. And she's a dancer. She's always been a dancer. And her color that she's always worn since she was a little child has been the dark evergreen color. And so it's a way for me to honor her.
That's so lovely. And of course, I love the symbolism of the name that you chose. And that's such like beautiful meaning. I love the way that you explained it. I love the way that for you it has different layers. It's really, really thoughtful. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, so you can go to evergreen.training and find out more about the services that we offer. I am in we're in the process right now. We're going to start refocusing a little bit. We've been going for about 2 years now and learning a lot, doing some evaluation of the services that we're providing. So we really want to target and hone in so that it could be focused more on the impact that we're having with the communities. Trying to grow my team, have different associates that I work with. So we're bringing in some more trainers, some amazing people that do amazing work around Indian country. But all of that will be on the website as things develop. And there is a page for mental health first aid on evergreen.training, and you can read more about the mental health first aid program there and how to book it for your community, organization, or your group.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I was a classroom teacher for 7 years, and you definitely want to be proactive with this kind of a
Mhm.
training, because when a young person is hurting and they're going through something and they decide that you are the
Mhm.
person that they trust and they feel safe opening up to, it is one of it's a blessing, and it's one of the greatest responsibilities that you can be given
Mm.
as an adult in that child's life. And you want to know that you can, shepherd them somewhere
Mhm.
safe, that you have answers to give them. So those of you listening out here, especially if you work with Indigenous youth, be proactive about this kind of training. Come and seek it out,
Mhm.
because you want to have those answers when they come to you, instead of kind of having that moment of, oh my gosh, I'm the adult here. I have to navigate this, and, feeling like you don't always have all the answers. But if you've already received that training, you're going to know what to do, and you're going to be able to help that child even better than you would be able to just, with
Right.
your own knowledge that you already have. So that's just something from a former teacher. When a kid picks you and trusts you and they
Yeah.
open up to you, it's such a beautiful thing, and you want to be able to, give them what they need.
Right. Well,
So,
thank you. Thank you, Brooke, for sharing that
yeah, absolutely.
beautiful insight. And, um, my wife is a teacher, so I understand what you're saying there. She's had to be there for students, and you never know when it's going to come, right? Um, and it's life. I mean, it's somebody's life, and so we have to be careful with it, but be proactive. And what I love about this training again is it helps build that confidence. Yeah, yeah, and that's what you said. I do have something that come to mind that I'd like to share. Um, I'm excited to be speaking and sharing with you today, um, with the Native Learning Center, because I know that you support a lot of the tribal housing authorities. And housing is one of those essential pieces of our life that our people, our families need. And wherever there's people, we have minds, we have mental health, mental wellness, emotional, physical, spiritual, all of those things that we talked about. And I can't imagine some of the challenges that some of our leaders in tribal housing authorities, some of the things that they see, right? And some of the decisions that they have to make. Or and so I think this is a great opportunity, a great training to learn about mental wellness, learn about maybe some of the local resources that are available so that we can make these decisions that are going to be helpful to promote wellness with our tribal members. And when we have healthy individuals and healthy families, we have healthy communities. So we all play a role. We can all be a part of that. And I know that many of you do, many of the housing authority leaders and staff. I know that you all do a lot and very active in your communities. And people know you, people count on you, people respect you. And so this could be just an additional resource, um, to help with where you already are, the focus that you already have. And so, with that, I just wanted to mention that because I know that our tribal housing authorities are so meaningful in the lives of our families, of our Native families. And so, I just want to thank them, thank each and every one of you for the work that you do each day, and however you start that day, with gratitude, and I know that that extends to the families that you serve and support. So, just wanted to say that much and acknowledge you for all your work and your presence.
Well, that was a beautiful note to end it on. All right, folks, I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Huge thank you to Cortney for joining us today. And we hope that this episode can help spread the word of mental wellness awareness, that some of you can learn more about mental health first aid, become some first aiders yourself. Like I said before, we are going to include that link to Cortney's company's website. We will include that below. So make sure to like and subscribe. And if you enjoy our show, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. And please also visit our website, nativelearningcenter.com. You can find information on upcoming webinars and trainings, and feel free to contact our website with any episode ideas that y'all would want to see us explore in further episodes. But be sure to come back for more content. Until then, this is Brooke and Awista, and we hope to connect with you guys real soon.